I'm really incredibly honored to be able to introduce our keynote speaker for today's event. He's someone who has inspired many people, and personally, he's pushed me to share my ideas through my blog. But he is the co-author of the Big Book of Dashboards and a senior data evangelist at Tableau. Please welcome Andy Cotgreave.
Well, hello everybody, and it is fantastic to be here with you all today. First of all, let me say a huge thank you to Brandy and Dustin for this event. It's not easy organising events like this, and it's really a great honour to be part of helping people in their data career. Now, it's great seeing all your comments. I'm seeing where you're all from. Before we start, I do want to know a little bit about you all, one other piece or two other pieces of information. Dustin, could you share my screen, please? I'm going to be talking about my career in data, but before I start, I want you to type in the chat, how many years have you been working in data, or months if it's less than 1 year? And what is the tool or platform you work with most? So how many years and what tool or platform do you work with most if you are working with a data tool? Me, I'm Andy. I've been 17 years in this data career, which is crazy. And my tool of choice is Tableau. So I'm going to see, I'm seeing 4 years, 2 months, Python, Tableau, Excel, Stata, SAS, Python, Tableau, right. Okay, so keep them coming in. I can see your chat as they come in. And what I'm enjoying is seeing there's a good variety and a lot of new starters. All right, so my career in data. Well, my name is Andy Cotgreave, Senior Data Evangelist at Tableau and co-author of the Big Book of Dashboards. If you're after a big book of dashboards, i.e. real-world examples you can be inspired by, go check that out. Before I start, I want to share my favorite review of the Big Book of Dashboards, and it was written by my daughter Lucy. Here she is when the book came in the summer the book came out. We went on holiday and she wrote in her journal, "This is my dad's book and I think it's really boring because it's about dashboards." Thanks, Lucy, for the vote of confidence. Now, maybe when she's out at university and beyond, she'll come to the Data Careers Summit as it's grown and grown and grown and becomes a global event, and she'll relearn that actually dashboards are blooming awesome. Go check out the book if that's your thing. If you like it, positive reviews on Amazon are great. If you don't like it, then write that down on a felt tip pen in your notebook. Right, so here's what I'm going to do today in the next 23 minutes. You can take some questions, type in some questions. I'll see if I can see them in the comments, but I might not. And we'll have some time, I think, for comments at the end. What then is it that I do? I'm Senior Data Evangelist at Tableau. That actually boils down to this. What I do is to help people see and understand data. It's a mission that Tableau has, and it's one that I very, very dearly hold to my heart. And how do I do that as a senior data evangelist? I create content. My intent is to create content that informs, educates, and entertains, whether that is in book format, appearing on podcasts, blog posts, doing training courses, running video series as Chart Chat, or developing my own YouTube channel. Did this one this week. The answer to this question is no. You are better than ChatGPT at data analysis, but go check that out. And I even get to host crazy keynotes like Tableau's Iron Viz, where I get to stand on stage in front of thousands of people and help inspire others by showing off the absolute brilliance that we find in the Tableau community. So it's an amazing job. It is an incredible privilege to be there. How did I get here then? Right now, as I share these ideas, I want to first of all just acknowledge my privilege. I am a cis white male. I had a very good education and had incredibly supportive parents. So I acknowledge that privilege. What I am sharing with you today is the experience I've had, and I can only share that experience with you. And I hope that whatever your circumstances, you will get some useful ideas out of this that you can take forward with you in your own career. So this is how I got to here, being a senior data evangelist. I'm going to take you back to high school when Andy Cotgreave left school at 18 wanting to draw comics for a living. That was my goal. I loved Judge Dredd and the original Infinity Gauntlet series and the Silver Surfer, and I wanted to draw comics. Well, that summer I went to the Arctic, to Svalbard, and spent 6 weeks wandering around the mountains and glaciers. And I decided to pivot instead and went to Edinburgh to do a geography degree because I decided looking at glaciers would actually be more fun. That was a great degree. During that degree, I discovered the internet, and this was 1993. Yes, I'm that old. I know you can't believe it, but I am. So I got into the internet really early. So I decided to pivot and go into software engineering. My first job out of college was as a software engineer with a company called RM, and I was writing packages for elementary or primary school kids. I did some color packages, some word processors, and a spreadsheet package, RM Number Magic. You could build charts in this, so here's an aside. And a lot of the resources we sent to schools encouraged them to press the 3D button to make 3D charts. Now, RM Number Magic was the most popular spreadsheet package used in schools for about 10 years. So I did inflict 3D charts on an entire generation of school kids in the UK, which maybe I should be punished for somehow. I don't know. But it was great fun doing that software. And after 6 years, I wanted to go and try and get in the weeds a little. So I got a job writing foreign exchange software, doing the back-end database development work there. Didn't really love that job, but I learned the database skills. Anyway, they made the company went bust, so I got made redundant and took my bicycle off to New Zealand for a year. And during that time, I wrote articles for the magazines and also worked in hotels as a tour guide for groups of cyclists. Great fun. Now, back to the UK in about 2005, and I got a job with a company called Fast Track or Tech Track, where we would go and interview CEOs of fast-growing companies and then write up reports for the sponsors. There, not only was I doing the research, I also started getting into the Access databases and their company data and spreadsheets. This is where my Excel skills started developing. Now, the boss at this company was a somewhat challenging person to work with. He was always demanding information. And so over time, I realized that I could help the team give him the information by creating in Excel these single-page printable summaries with charts on them. And I could go, hey, Mish, here's your summary. Single-page printed thing with charts on them. I had no idea those things were called dashboards, but that was the beginning of the real data analysis skills. And then in 2007, I went to Oxford University, where I became a data analyst. And in November 2007, I downloaded Tableau Desktop, and that blew everything apart because that was a piece of software that took all my skills and enabled me to be an amazing data analyst, or to really develop those skills and become a Tableau expert. I got very involved in the early Tableau community between 2008 and 2011. And then in September 2011, I joined Tableau as a pre-sales engineer, then became social media manager, and then in 2016 became Tableau evangelist. So there you go. That is how Andy went from school to February 2023. Why am I telling you this? Well, it's not really about the things I did, it's about the skills I learned. I was an artist, a creative visual thinker. Then I went and did a liberal arts humanities degree, where I learned empathy and research and critical thinking skills. Software engineering taught me how to write code, and I did a lot of user experience design, user interface design, and really picked up how to make things that work for the end users. As the unexciting foreign exchange software, didn't enjoy the software, but I did come out of that knowing everything about databases. In New Zealand, I was writing, I became good at the written word, but also learning how to deal with customers, listening to their needs and ensuring they were having a good experience. At Fast Track, not only the Excel skills, but again, listening to CEOs and synthesizing their challenges and their opportunities and turning those into good research. But Excel skills. And then finally, I became the data analyst. when people ask me, how do I become a data analyst? Some time ago, I would have pointed people to a post by Andy Cotgreave of visualizingdata.com, where he said, you need to wear 7 hats to be a great data analyst. And each of those hats represents the skills you need. And it was only a few years ago that I actually looked at my own career and realized that these are all the skills I had accidentally done through my career. This is my timeline, but you could pick up these skills in any kind of order to try and accrue as many of these skills as possible. But this is my timeline. And obviously, it's not really that I was just doing art and I was just doing databases and I was just doing Excel. Each of these skills were ones I was working on in parallel, but what you see here is kind of the main focuses. And this is something I really recommend you think of as you develop your data career. You can go deep into 1 or 2 or 3 skills, maybe 1 or 2, and that's something you should be doing. But it's really important to try and keep a broad spectrum of skills. I see Dustin has just shared a link to my newsletter, The Sweet Spot. In that, I try and bring articles and books and podcasts from a really diverse set of skills and areas to people who want to read this stuff, because I think the wider your influence is, the better you will be at data. So I'll also note that if you want to get into data engineering and the cutting edge of AI, machine learning, generative AI, I didn't accrue any of those skills. You're going to need deeper statistical knowledge of machine learning. I also, although I guess I'm a leader in that I've written books and do a lot of speaking, I don't have management skills, so you would have to pick up those along the way. So that's how I got here. And is it all wonderful? Well, clearly I have this really fantastic job, but I want to let you into a secret. Well, actually 2 secrets. The first secret is I used Midjourney to create some of this image and some of the others you're going to see in a moment. And I'm quite glad that this isn't an artist careers summit, because I'm sure many of you have used Midjourney and it's crazily good. So fortunately, we're doing data, and right now that's best done by humans. Anyway, I have imposter syndrome, and this might surprise you. Here I am keynoting a careers summit. Brandy and Dustin obviously think I've got a career that is worth talking about. I've written a successful book. I've got social media followers. I get to host keynotes at huge data conferences. And I suffer hugely from imposter syndrome. Sometimes I'll just see one post or a video or a Tableau workbook and just think, oh, I'm rubbish. How can anybody like what I do? I know nothing. The book came out, and it honestly took me 3 years after the big book of dashboards came out for me to think, oh, it's probably pretty good. So this is an odd feeling. I'm at the same time a confident person, very extroverted, but I also have this little imposter syndrome guy sitting on my shoulder, giving me a hard time. And I think this is important to people early in their careers to understand. It could be something you might suffer from. You might already suffer from it, or you might not, in which case, brilliant. I found as I've begun mentoring more and more people that often they feel intimidated by seeing what more experienced people are doing around them. Now, in the world of Tableau, we celebrate IronViz creators and put them on big pedestals at conference, and because they're showing off the best that Tableau can do. But we're very mindful that sometimes when we share that stuff, is that actually intimidating and off-putting for people at the beginning of their career? So one way I have learned to deal with this is to look at progression of skills. So I'm going to share my own progression as a sort of dashboard and visual designer. Here it is. This is June 2008. That's quite a long time ago. This is the first Tableau dashboard I ever published, and it shows student data in the University of Oxford. Now, it's kind of clunky, but I thought it was great at the time. By the way, Jeremy Anderson has just asked a question about looking back at my career. Will I look in the future? I'm going to come on to that in a few minutes. So that's a great question, Jeremy. But this is the first dashboard I ever built, right? I was really proud of it at the time. 2010, I was getting into public data, and this dashboard was published on the Guardian data blog. Woohoo! I was there, and it shows the routes taken by bikes in the London cycle hire scheme, which were called Boris bikes back then. And now it's still pretty clunky, but you can begin to see, I was getting like an idea of flow and story. 2014, at this point, I was working with DataSift, who had access to the entire Twitter fire hose. It was a fantastic data set. And what this is a chart showing all the tweets during the quarterfinals of the 2014 Soccer World Cup. The y-axis shows how long the word goal was in each individual tweet. So this tweet during the Colombia versus Uruguay game was about 138 characters long. It just went, goal! Very excited individual tweeting short. So great chart, bit of fun. But again, you're beginning to see a design style evolve. And then by 2017, I was designing things like this. This is largely the design style I've settled on as my own personal approach. Very simple, stripped back, austere, sometimes with a little bit of visual flair, but nothing too crazy. And you know, I'm really happy with this design style. It's tweaked a little bit. So the reason I show you these is I must always stay humble, because I must always remember that I was excited when I built that in 2008. So even though there are people who can do things like this and things that are better than this, every single one of us or them who are here started here. And when you are here, this is great. This might seem scary, you know, some of the things you see might seem intimidating, but you will get there by practicing, 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 and practicing. We can talk a little bit on that in a moment if you wish, but practice is so important. Emma Lay asks, how did I find my design style in DataViz? I mean, I kind of find it through evolution, Emma, and in part driven by, I'm actually quite lazy, and it's a bit easier to design things like this than it is otherwise. But even if I do stuff in PowerPoint or any tool now, it always sticks to that design. For me, trying to get the data across in the simplest way possible. I also read a lot about design theory, and that helped as well. Right, so now here comes the career advice. Should you plan your career or should you not plan your career? So somebody who asked this question earlier, let's address this. There are two ways one can plan one's career, and I have, well, you can try the punk approach, which is chaos, or the ordered approach, which is a bit more planned. Let me tell you about the punk approach. And for this, I'm going to take inspiration from a punk fanzine that was published in England in the mid to late 1970s when the Sex Pistols were all the rage. Sideburns. On the second edition of Sideburns, on page 2, they did this. Playing in the band, first and last in the series. This is the A chord, this is the E chord, this is the G chord. Now form a band. Genius, right? Absolute genius. To make a punk band, you don't need to be skilled. You just need motivation, passion, and the bare bones skills. From there, you know, you're involved, you'll be in the community, you'll be learning skills. You might evolve into a great band that will have longevity or not, but at least you're in there. Now, I was made aware of this about 11, 12 years ago when Simon Rogers, who was the data editor at the Guardian blog, at the Guardian at the time, used this to say, this is how people can start their data journalism career. Just start, right? Learn and just start. So I like to thank about such as this for the data geeks. Is a pre-attached attribute. Width is a pre-attentive attribute. Hue or color is a third pre-attentive attribute. Let's make some charts. This is just a great way to get involved in data visualization, but this approach also kind of explains how I did my entire career. That whole map from school to Tableau Data Evangelist was a little bit, I know enough, and off I go. I'm going to follow that path. So that's the punk approach that has worked for me. Now let me tell you the ordered approach, because the punk approach hasn't always worked for me. And I want to tell you a little story from 1996. So here I am, circa 1996. Look at this fine young man trying to dress a bit like Chandler Bing and Friends, and whoa, what was going on with that hair? Anyway, I was in my first job, and they sent me on some graduate training, and something happened on that training that has stuck with me throughout my career. The trainer was talking about career planning, and we did a short meditation, and then he said, take a big piece of paper and draw where you are in 20 years. All right. So I was chilled, I relaxed, and I drew something like this. I mean, this is mid-journey doing a really sweet job, but I drew people surrounded by lakes and mountains. I was really pleased. And then I looked around, and I kid you not, everybody else had drawn money, cars, and houses. And this was really weird. This was really, really weird. What was it that was different about me from everybody else? The instructor then went on to tell us that the most successful people in life, have a career plan. And they look at it every few years. The 22-year-old Andy in that room looked at my mountains and everybody else's cars and thought, nah, I'm not doing that. I want to focus on this, and I'm going to follow my chaos route. And that worked incredibly well. As we've seen, my plan enabled this portfolio career that created a big rainbow of skills. And that's awesome. But 4 years ago, I found myself in a rut. I wanted a promotion. I'd been evangelist for about 4 years at this point. I was struggling to find direction, and I wanted a promotion. I was getting more and more frustrated. No matter what I did, I didn't feel like I was getting recognized for my contribution. And it wasn't until my mentor, who was about 10 years older than me, pointed out that, Andy, you don't have a plan for this stage of your career. How could your managers measure you or promote you if you cannot articulate to them what you want to achieve in your career? And that was really profound. So I wrote a plan, and a plan that was probably going to guide me to the end of my career. And then it was a very, very constructive 12 months working with, not in conflict with, my manager, and I got promotion and an evolution of the role. So what does that mean? It's really interesting, right? Because what is my advice to those of you who are right at the start of your career? The 51-year-old that you're speaking to now says, I have learned that writing down and thinking about your future is a really clever thing to do. It gives you a sort of a benchmark against which you can look in 1 year or 2 years and just think, am I on that path? Do I want to be on a different path? You don't have to stick to that list, just writing something down. But I know that if my 22-year-old self is in this audience, the 22-year-old self will be going, nah, Andy, what do you know? I'm going to do it this way. So I cannot tell you which is the right way to plan or not. I can tell you both of these have worked at different parts of my career, and I'm sure both of these could work at any stage in any career. But they are both alternatives that may or may not succeed for you. All right, so we're coming to the end. I've probably got time for a question or two. Before I go on to those, we looked at those 4 things. I just want to thank Brandy and the team again. Thanks so much. I hope you have a really fantastic day. Here are the various things you can do to follow me or engage with me, and I hope that has been good. And I want to hear some questions. And Dustin, your name just completely disappeared.
No worries. Thank you so much, Andy. What an amazing story and journey. I think, to summarize some of the comments that I saw in the chat, I mean, I think folks appreciated just your style of presenting everything in a very straightforward and easy to understand way, and a really honest perspective on your path in the field. So saw lots of good comments around that. We do have time for a question or two. I think, Andy, you wanted to address, was it Jeremy's question?
Yeah, so Jeremy asked, looking back at the career, how far out in the future do you plan? I mean, I think I've now got a roadmap. I did actually write a list when I started Tableau. I did write down a list of 10 things I thought I could achieve at Tableau, which was a bit like that. So right now, I'm looking fairly accurately the next 2 or 3 years, but I feel like I've got 2 or 3 paths. And then there's a bit of a goal. But now there's an age at which I can retire goal. How many of you are thinking, what? I'm miles and miles and miles away from that. Well, you'll be like me one day.
Awesome. And then another good one here, I thought. They asked Data Career Summit, but I think who better to ask but Andy Cotgreave, why is the role Data Evangelist?
Well, that's a great question. So my job is to evangelize, so to spread the passion to see and understand data. Evangelist was Guy Kawasaki was the first tech evangelist. He used to work with Apple, so it's a bit of a West Coast Silicon Valley job title. Sometimes you see developer relationships. I mean, even CTOs or CDOs are essentially evangelists. But I'm not selling. I'm not marketing. I mean, I am selling and marketing software, but I'm not thinking of it in terms of marketing or selling. I care that people see and understand their data better, and I happen to think Tableau is the best piece of software on the planet to do that. So it's a little matching that works incredibly well.
Love it. All right, and then let's do one more, if you don't mind. Maybe I'll restructure this one a little bit. What was the moment for you, Andy, where you kind of touched on it, but when did you know that data was your career?
I think it was that job before the University of Oxford, when I was just driven to do these single page Excel printouts. And I'm like, oh, hang on a minute. Hang on. What am I doing here? And at some point there or the next, well, some point there, it's like, this is dashboards and this is a thing. And I was really getting into the Excel community at the point. And I think it was like, right, that's the next step.
Awesome.
So yeah, actually, so to distill that, it's trying to solve people's problems with data. That's a great question. I've never thought about it like that.
Sure. Very cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy, for joining us. Great start to the morning here, but turning into evening for you and for others. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing. Andy mentioned some of the resources that you can take a look at to follow him and the work that he does. I've continued to share out some of those links in the chat. The last one I'm going to share is actually how you can follow Andy on LinkedIn. He's a great follow, one of my personal favorites. So thank you very much, Andy.
All right, my pleasure. And everybody, I hope you have a great day. And we'll see you all on LinkedIn or elsewhere.
Very cool.
Andy.
Thanks, Andy.